Hi everyone, my name is Louisa Spring. Obviously, I'm really excited to moderate this amazing panel of women. I founded Spring Alliance in 2002. I work with talent across all forms of immersive media. I help them to develop their business strategy and package their IP. One of the last companies I worked with, I brought in $3.2 million in 7 months. Anyway, so I'd like everyone to introduce themselves and tell us who you are and which company you're with.
Great. Hi, I'm Allison Nguyen. I'm with My Dream Interactive, and currently we're making one of the top VR productivity apps, VR Toolbox, and I have another product out in the market soon. It's a game for family and children called Candy Squad. Look for it at E3.
Hi, I'm Rachel Skidmore. I'm from Skybound Entertainment. I produce narrative VR, so scripted experiences. And as a company, we just launched on the interactive side a game called Giant Cop in VR.
Hi, I'm Kimber Lim. I'm with Holler Media. We just started by creating our own proprietary camera system. One is a consumer VR camera that just got launched at Billboard Awards on Sunday. And we are getting ready to launch an interactive 360 platform.
Hi, I'm Jenny Ogden. I'm with IQ Productions. And we do something a little bit different. We do a lot of projection mapping to create immersive shared experience for live performance. So we have, currently we're working on 2 live theater shows for Norwegian Cruise Lines, and we've projection mapped the theater walls, stage deck, proscenium, and the set pieces as well. We've done 7 shows for Disney Cruise Lines. We've got 2 now on Norwegian, and we're also developing live theater in full dome immersive experience and 4D experience for that. And we're also exploring a little VR, mostly just 360 video at this point, and we'll start developing our first immersive piece in the fall.
Cool. Hi, I'm Christina Heller. I'm the CEO and co-founder of VR Playhouse. We are a creative studio and production company that specializes in all of the things that fall into that VR AR umbrella. So game engine, CG, and 360 video. Mostly production services, although we do original content as well. We had a piece that won the best VR healthcare at the Special Jury Prize at South by Southwest, and another piece recently in Cannes that was a 360 documentary. So when we do get to do original work, we're very excited about what I would call like VR for impact and VR that has like real practical applications that could make people's lives more interesting. And then we're always excited about helping bring other people's VR visions to life.
Hi, my name is Ryan Pulliam. I'm the CMO and co-founder of Specular Theory, and we are also immersive content creators for VR and AR and mixed reality. Doing mostly original content now. We've also done a lot of branded work. We've worked with Dolby and Edmunds and YouTube and Jeep. We also had a couple pieces at Sundance called Perspective, which is an original series we created, and we won the first Streamy Award for VR for our project with YouTube. And now we're creating music-based games for location-based entertainment.
So I was in TV and film before, but I'd like to know what got each of you into VR and what were you doing before? Pre-VR.
I kind of fell into it. I was making a 3D virtual world game for kids called My Dream. It was a cooperative, non-violent version of Minecraft, and basically Microsoft bought Minecraft and ate our lunch. And we wanted to turn our game into VR. While we were doing that, we realized the tool set that we created was very valuable and people wanted to pay for it. So we put it on Steam, and that's how we kind of became one of the top selling productivity apps in VR.
I still straddle the line between what I was doing pre-VR and now that I'm working in VR. So I work in digital media development. So I'd say I'm more of a cross-platform producer who's gotten to play in the beginning stages of very early in VR, producing content, starting 2-3 years ago in the VR space. So I still do both I produce and develop for all of the SVOD platforms and new players, and then at the same time focus on VR content.
So my background is visual effects, and I've played in that world for 20 years now. And I think it's a very natural place for people with visual effects background to be in, MR, VR, AR space, talking about a new, platform, new technology, new ways to kind of figure out how to do things, deliver it, create it, make it, figure out what works, doesn't, experiment, create software, hardware. So it's been the first time that I got introduced to VR was producing one of Samsung's first VR piece called The Recruit, and it was at the time the first scripted live action acted piece that we did to help launch Milk VR, which was the predecessor to the Samsung VR platform. So
we started off doing projection design for theater and projection mapping for themed entertainment, architainment, that sort of thing. And it was kind of a natural step for us to become more and more immersive. Instead of using screens, we wanted to get out onto the walls and on the stage deck and on set pieces and on architecture and really break the fourth wall and wrap people in the experience. And then stepping into full dome, and a natural step from there, of course, is VR experience, is just really wrapping people in an experience and taking them there instead of showing them, removing that separation between a viewer and making them instead a participant was kind of a natural step for us, just because we were always playing with the technology and the projection design and that sort of thing, as well as creative content and experience design.
I was a documentary filmmaker and journalist that went from old media, started in radio, and I eventually got more interested in new media and distribution. So I worked at Current TV when that was still really active in 2008, and then moved to making feature documentaries and explored digital distribution for those documentaries, and was also definitely an entrepreneurial type. I didn't have haven't worked a job for somebody else, I think, since 2007. So all of that kind of was coming together when we discovered the Oculus Rift, or I discovered the Oculus Rift for the first time, which was in January 2014. And it was, for me, just another exciting new way to use media to make an impact and distribute. And because it's distributed digitally, it was extremely exciting, because when you make something and it can be distributed digitally, it means it can be seen by people around the world, and really the sky's the limit as far as the impact it can have. And so I think as a medium, we're all trying to get to that point where we make that VR piece that has that kind of viral effect, but it's certainly I think an exciting goal to work towards.
Yeah, I think similar to that, I had a background in marketing and advertising. I did a lot of social influencer and experiential marketing, and actually met my now business partner, Morris May, through kiteboarding, and his whole background was in Hollywood visual effects, did that for about 25, 30 years. So he first got the DK1 when it first shipped, and I've been reading about it. I love emerging technology and media, similar to Christina, and so he just told me he had it. We tried the Rift Coaster, and I was just so blown away, and I could immediately, see the applications for brands, but I could realize it was much bigger than that. And he told me he could create it, and I said I would do everything else, and quit my job, and Specular Theory was born.
So the recent sexual harassment lawsuits are pretty much the elephant in the room. As a young lawyer in England, I was sexually harassed actually by my senior partner, who had the power to approve whether I made it to the bar or not. I forgot actually how much I cried every night over that, and it eventually drove me from the profession. I just want to note that I've been a victim of harassment myself, but I want to put it out into this room that my door is always open to anyone. It's illegal and it should be stopped. And I just want to see if there are any positive ideas that you have in a way that can help other women in this new world. Any one of you can answer.
Well, I think that, you know, it was interesting. So that obviously when that happened, it sent shockwaves through our close-knit community. And I think probably sent a shiver down the spine of a number of companies that may have had more loose policies regarding the way that they speak at work and around women. And I think I noticed that just by like the merit of it coming out, I've been having a lot more conversations with people in the VR community about appropriate behavior and how to talk with employees. And, you know, I've even pulled a couple of my employees aside who I have both personal and professional relationships with them, was like, you know, I hadn't really thought about this before, but if anything I've ever said at work, you know, you don't feel comfortable about in a work environment, please tell me, you know, because I think that it sometimes can be difficult. So I guess also, like, now I'm starting to also be more aware of, like, if you see something, say something. There was definitely this, I think there's a tendency for a lot of people and also women to not want to come off as not cool or not want to come off as, oh, just like you know, paranoid, especially because sometimes when people may be a little inappropriate with you, it's people you also have a friendly relationship with, because it's inside that friendly, maybe half professional, half personal sort of relationship that the line can get crossed. And so it's weird when you're friendly with somebody and then occasionally they might do something that you're like, ooh, and that makes me feel a little weird. I have been a little bit more upfront inside personal groups of friends now with certain things that like maybe didn't feel as right, and I'm just like, we're talking about it a little bit more. So I don't know if that completely answers the question, but that's what I've noticed.
I think for me, I own the company, the IQ, and I have a lot of men that work for me that are a little old school, and I also have a lot of young women that are starting to come on board, and I've just told the guys repeatedly that they can't be inappropriate in the office, and I call them out. But I've also seen one young woman that works in my office, and it wasn't somebody that was part of my company, but a company that we were working alongside because we travel a lot, obviously, since we put shows up in cruise lines and that sort of thing, who was feeling really uncomfortable with other workers around us and didn't know what to do. And I realized that when she felt uncomfortable, she laughed, which is really common.
Yeah.
And she wasn't protecting herself. And we were on a ship that was being built, so it was basically a big construction site. And I was really bothered by that. And I told her, I said, if you ever feel uncomfortable from anybody around you, come to us. You know, don't laugh, don't put up with it. Don't put up with it because you don't want to cause a stink. And you know, and she's 22. She graduated 2 years ago and started working with us from being an intern, and I hired her full time. And you know, and I'm taking her all over the world, and I you know, it makes me really nervous that she is getting put in situations like that, and I feel like I need to protect her, and it's a big problem, I think, as women, that we don't feel comfortable saying that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on to lighter subjects. What ideas do you have to encourage more women to start experimenting in VR? So each of you have different areas of expertise, and I'd love to hear like how you think you can get more girls to code, girls in tech, that kind of thing.
I have two teenage girls, and I do encourage them to code. Some great websites are CodeHS.com, Code Academy. Also, enrolling them in coding summer camps are good. I do think it's really important to teach them at a young age. I actually designed a coding curriculum for first graders. It's like learning a new language or learning how to ski. The older you are, it is harder because it's a different way of thinking. It's not just the mechanics of coding, it's it's abstraction, and it's a very difficult concept to get your head wrapped around, male or female. Probably more so for females because we're very practical and concrete, where abstraction requires a lot of time, kind of, you know, the same type of thinking that gets boys onto spending hours and hours building Thomas train tracks. So that's just how most boys are, and most girls would prefer to play on the playground or color for a few hours. So it is important to recognize that we have these differences and to start teaching this new language of abstraction. And I mean, I wouldn't even call it programming, because programming is like, oh, well, we're just teaching someone to type. No, it's not teaching someone how to type. It's teaching someone problem solving. It's quantum physics is what computer science is. You have to look at the tree, the big picture. You have to go up and down the tree. The earlier you teach this language, how do they, you know, ski? How do they maneuver in this new environment? The stronger they will be as computer scientists, as computer designers. And, you know, to kind of add to your previous question, to really help insulate them from some of these sexual harassment situations that they will come into, right? Because the more self-sufficient you are, then the more powerful you are in a situation. You're not relying on someone to promote you. If you don't like that environment, well, you know what? If you're a designer, if you're marketing, and if you know how to program, well, then you're a superhero. You can go out there and start your own company. You don't have to be subjected to sexual harassment. You feel empowered to say, hey, stop it. This is not appropriate. I'm leaving this room, and I'm going to go start my own company, which, you know, there are people like me who do that, where I do the marketing, I do the biz dev, I do the design, and I also do the software architecture. And it makes you stronger and more powerful if you can teach girls, whether it's your own children, nieces, neighbors, volunteer at a local junior high. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do to really empower young girls, is to teach them how to not teach them how to program, but to teach them how to understand abstraction and computer science.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, we live in such an exciting time right now too, and I think honestly, I think VR is a big answer to both of those things. I think you can, you know, unlike other mediums before it, the fact that you can, you know, really become another person and kind of create these environments, I mean, that right there as its own content piece could really, you know, help with sexual harassment or help, you know, raise issues around things that maybe some people just aren't aware of, or they don't know what it feels like. And that goes down from everything from, you know, being a bully to sexual harassment to being a woman in the workplace. I think it's really empowering tool. And I think, you know, I've kind of always said if I had had VR in middle school, I probably would have had a huge interest in engineering and programming and all these things that I now nerd out on. But, you know, at the time I couldn't, you know, reading about it in a textbook, just, it couldn't explain itself to me. So the fact that, like, you can, you know, travel the universe and you can, you know, you could actually see particles of the periodic table, like things like that, I feel like in itself will become, you know, is education, which can become entertainment, which could actually affect the career choice and really inspire, I think, a lot of women and anyone to get into the space, which is really exciting.
I'm also going to backtrack just to kind of reiterate, because I've now been doing this a really long time, and in a place where, you know, I used to be the only girl, woman in a room of men, all through my early career doing interactive, also gaming, you know, before even going into visual effects. And, you know, one of the things that that I've lived through is that, you know, as much as things have changed, things haven't really. It's just gotten suppressed. And a lot of that still exists. You know, I lived in an environment where, you know, guys could do and say whatever they wanted to in the workplace. And although, you know, a lot of that has improved, I think the thing that also has improved is that women have now started to band together and talk about it more and be able to have more confidence in their own ability to do things. And that really helps to kind of separate what is tolerable and not, and for us to be able to speak for ourselves. And, you know, one of the things that I always try to encourage, that I also try to practice myself, is to hire more women, because that's the only way that, you know, a lot of that is going to improve. And if you can't hire them, refer them, because that also helps a lot in that workplace. And if you can't do that, then definitely mentor and teach, especially young women, because it is really important to do that. I have three daughters myself, and so that is a very, you know, important place for me to be, to do that. And as we start to, you know, gain in our own confidence and be able to start our own businesses, the thing that is also encouraging is that there are more places now to go to help get funding for your ideas and your projects and your businesses. And I am involved in a couple of different organizations that help to do that. One is women.vc, which is a place that is run by an amazing group of very highly educated and intelligent women who started to also create their own fund, as well as a company called SHEEO, SHEEO.world. And they are also creating a perpetual fund that helps, you know, women to have a place to bring together their ideas and to have a place in the market to make their voices heard.
I actually want to jump into a little pivot, which is that I think in VR right now, we're also really trying to make this a sustainable, healthy marketplace. And so that means we need to have the digital and VR products that make money. So I encourage women who are interested in getting in VR to think about applications for which they would really like to use VR. So I'm going to use virtual retail as an example, though I'm not trying to say that women love to shop, but it is one of those things where, like, there's a huge opportunity for virtual retail, and that is something that I can imagine engaging with myself. And so as you start to experiment with VR, think about what would get you to put on that headset, or what would get you to use the AR on your phone, and start developing IP around that. And I think you might find that there's a lot more receptive people in the VR world than you expect.
Yeah, and the beauty of it too is just there's so much opportunity. I mean, really, in whatever department or career or major you are in college, like, there's a place for you to work in this space. And to Christina's point, you know, we kind of laugh in the office sometimes because my business partner will call it the Ryan test, because I do kind of bring this consumer lens because I don't have the technical background that he does, and that really has helped us, you know, a lot of times in meetings just to have a fresh perspective on exactly to that point, like thinking about why you would use VR and is it compelling enough? Because if you can't sell it to yourself, or your family wouldn't use it, or your friends, then, you know, it's probably not a great sign, but keep working on what will.
So, what experience would you guys like to see make in VR, and who would you like to work with in a perfect world?
So many.
Anyone?
I mean, I'm really, I mean, we're doing a music-based, you know, location game right now, so we're looking to partner with some really big artists. I think there's a huge collaboration there that could be super exciting. We have, you know, we're also really passionate about some charity pieces that we have. I still think that while there has been a lot of VR content around it, I still think there's a huge kind of missed opportunity in certain ways to really use it and have 360 degrees of engagement with the community, with, you know, the organization and the piece, and you know, and the location and where you're showing it, and to raise money. I also think it'd be great just to travel through the human body and or, you know, watch a DJ performance on the moon. I like everything.
I think I'd like to work with Julie Taymor, is who I'd like to work with.
The director of The Lion King?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room to play Let's see. Like I think theater translates incredibly well, and so that extends into performance art. And so, I think about people like Solange. I think about Miranda July. And local writers. There's this woman Megan Brown who's been doing some incredible work locally, and to really challenge them to watch more VR and really understand all of the capabilities, and then the capabilities that we're still uncovering, and see what they can do with it. Because I think that sounds amazing to get in their minds.
I'd like to reiterate another panelist's point about just opening a child's mind to different possibilities when they're in junior high or high school as they're making their career choices. And I think VR could be really an amazing tool for education. Instead of just reading a book or going through a textbook, you're taking a journey to Mars, say, with Elon Musk through, SpaceX. And that would be a great opportunity to learn physics in real time as you go on the rocket ship, and you're learning about the gravitational pull and quantum physics that way. And it comes alive, and it's not just a dry formulae. So, as an example of an application, or you were mentioning about the human body, right? How about taking a magic school bus through your capillaries and visiting all your different organs and their functionalities? Just as an adult, I'm super excited to go on that journey.
Brilliant. I agree with you about the educational side as well. Okay, tell me about your creative process. How do you start with thinking about creating your own IP? I know, Rachel, you're with Skybound, so obviously you have a lot of IP. Is there a way, for example, that you sift through your catalog and think what's better, or what will resonate more, for example?
Sure. We actually, while we have a ton of IP, we have a lot of comics. We have a lot of, that's where many of our projects stem from. We're always acquiring new IP, because for us, it's of course the idea is key, but the creator is actually the most important piece. So we're looking for collaborators to come in and activate these different parts of the company. We call it the Wheel of Awesome, and we have VR, we have TV, we have video games, we have a little bit of everything, live events, we have a cruise. But it's more about, is this creator, along with their idea, can they dream in this within this new medium? And so, our project right now, the project we have in post-production is Delusion Lies Within, and that's going back to taking a live theater, immersive theater experience and bringing that to life in VR. And so it was, it still has a creative process, and it becomes its own iteration, its own sort of derivative. It's different than the play. So we work with creators to kind of educate them on these processes and capabilities and guide them in that development process. How do we expand upon a script? How do we teach them the types of actors to look for, and bring in, a really great DP who specializes in VR to kind of take them back to film school a little bit.
I think there's always two sides, unfortunately, now that we're all trying to figure out how to monetize content in this platform. In terms of the process, it still comes down to, who you think your audience is and what you think they're going to like, and ultimately, until we start to build up a lot of that analytics to really tell us for sure who is engaging in this type of content, for now, it's really easy because you can just do what you like to do. Pick what kind of topics you want to cover. Really, this is the time still to experiment and figure that out. But as a company and as a business, we're constantly needing to look at, well, how do we bring more people to this medium? How do we get them to put on the headset? How do we get them to engage? Bringing in, it's going to be very important for us to bring in those influencers, those brands, create content around things that, that can be marketed, that makes sense, that there is a place for that. Having said that, there's so many different places, including education and including, the entertainment sector, as well as health and science, and even just healthcare and training doctors, in third world countries, to this platform, which is so amazing, and we see that potential being there, and that's what's exciting. So we're still struggling. I'm still looking to figure that out, but that currently is the process for me.
Christina, I know that you've got a new project out there. Is that correct?
We do have a number of, we always have like 5 things in the works and getting out there. I wanted to quickly talk about the thing I would want to make, because I had all this time to think about it now and I didn't get a chance to
Okay.
I think the dream, if we really had the dream, is that we would want to make the virtual metaverse as dynamic and exciting as the real world, but then with the magical elements you can only get in VR. So if there was somebody with really deep pockets, really that's the dream collaborator, someone that has
Okay.
deep pockets and a vision to turn something that blends like virtual real estate, virtual retail into an immersive social experience where you are now like engaging with actual people in a virtual world in a magnificently well-designed architectural virtual masterpiece, and could engage with 3-dimensional objects that you could actually like look at and see the specs of and explore and play with, and then if you liked it you could actually buy it. That would be a really cool project to work on. And then the creative process for me, I can only speak for me personally, because I think everyone at VR Playhouse probably has a little bit of a different approach to how they do their creative. But for me, it starts off with like, okay, what is the goal of this VR piece, and what are we trying to accomplish? And then I think about me, and I think about maybe 5 or 6 other people in my life, and I think about them doing this thing and what would get them to engage with it in that way. And then I immediately go to the feeling part of it, because if somebody puts themselves in a VR headset and they start feeling the way we want them to feel, then that's going to be the thing that connects them to it, makes it a good VR experience, and is successful. And so, like, for example, I recently had a creative that was built around the idea of a desert island, because I was like, the desert island is a universal human fantasy, and it's been something like everybody, doesn't matter where you are, rich, poor, urban, rural, we all have this desert island fantasy. And so for me, that was a fun place to start with that creative, because it evoked a feeling deep inside, and that's a fun place to explore. At that point, it becomes about like communicating that idea visually and graphically in a deck that is persuasive and written like a nice essay, so that, by the time someone gets to the end of the deck, they say like, yes, here's a check. And then and then obviously you need to be very careful about authoring a very, like, putting a lot of time and energy into authoring a technical workflow, just the same way you would author a script, because that piece of it is going to be very crucial in terms of executing your vision inside the next time frame. So we take that through a lot of trial and error. Honestly, over the past 3 years, we've learned a lot of the ways to do this technical workflow, and now I take that part very, very seriously when I'm conceiving the execution of a project.
And
Yeah, I
Ryan,
think that sometimes actually is a misconception, I think, too, with especially like agencies and brands. There's a lot that goes into a bid on a project, and a lot of that is because of the creative process and really determining, what works, what won't work, interactivity, the output, your goals. So, obviously we always, same thing, like, what's the goal, where is it going, are we doing an internal, original content piece, are we creating something for a client, and we've been at it for a little over 3 years now, so we pretty much have a great understanding on what works and what won't work. I've been spoiled because my business partner kind of leads all the production and technical side of things, and he just has a really in-depth understanding and knowledge from both the creative and technical perspective, and so we kind of have about a probably 15-page document that we use internally that's sort of our litmus test in terms of, at the end of the day, like the goal is to like create something that's authentic to VR, and I mean that in the sense that, there should be a reason you're putting on the headset and that you're in the experience, and if you're just sort of copying or mirroring, the same content from another screen, whether it's a commercial or TV or film, and just optimizing it for a VR headset, the chances are you could just watch it on the other screen, and that's what you would prefer to do. So like really thinking through, like, why am I in this experience? Why do I have this perspective? What is the object, whether it's, passive or an interactive experience? But that's our most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, you've won Sundance for your narratives, so...
We did, yes, and that was a huge testament to, again, my business partner and his vision. And that was something too where, a lot of times it is that storytelling component that you want to put first. I mean, we've been lucky because we can kind of build the tech around that to create whatever story it is that we want to tell. And the Sundance piece in particular, especially the first year, I mean, that was like in 2014 or 2015 at Sundance, but we were so nervous because by the time it got to Sundance, the technology was already outdated. I mean, we had already built all new cameras, and we were just worried people were going to complain about the pixel quality and everything. And not one person mentioned the technology, which is just a big testament, I think, to the story. Mm-hmm.
I think that when we're developing new content or our own, a lot of it's the why, because I know that the shows that I'm personally developing also have a reason for being, whether it's cultural storytelling, which I think is really important, or whether it's got some sort of a social call to action attached to the storytelling. We look at things from a multi-platform storytelling perspective when we're developing something. So there might be a television series, there might be a VR piece, there might be a live theater piece to it, there might be books attached to it or gaming attached to it. And what part of your story or universe, your 360 storytelling universe, is best served by VR and immersive experience, and what pieces maybe aren't, and making sure that you're looking at your development from that standpoint from the get-go.
So, marketing and advertising companies, how easy have they been to deal with? How much education did you have to give them? What do you think about agency pieces when they do their own? I'm hoping you'll throw some things out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's all client education, to be honest. I think a few years ago, it was a lot of someone got assigned this VR thing on their, agenda or to-do list by their boss, and so they just called people and just wanted to understand it more and figure out what was going on, but they didn't really have budgets together, they didn't have departments, which if you don't have a department, then you're definitely not getting budget unless it's left over. So we have seen a lot of changes, and now it's to the point where I think agencies are either partnering with or creating their own internal agencies to do any kind of immersive content. I mean, they really see, I think, the value. I think you're always going to have the leading brands that always just want to do something to be first, and that's kind of already happened. So a lot of companies, even Mountain Dew is a good example of one of the brands that did it really early on, but if you start looking at their campaigns, they're putting together bigger budgets and doing more projects now. So I think it is important for brands and agencies to realize, getting into it now is just going to be better later on, because they're not figuring it out now. They figured it out a couple of years ago, and now they're creating, pieces that you can charge for and get real analytics from and ROI and results from that. It is difficult because it is so new, and it's a lot of trust, I think. You're calling a company that you haven't worked with about a product that hasn't existed before, that you don't have control over like you would in other kind of mediums, or like a true understanding. So, there's a lot of trust in that, and definitely you want to partner with the right, VR content creators. It is a lot, I think, to do on your own, but I feel great about it. I love it. Working with brands is one of my favorite things. I think it's a win-win. This is their opportunity to really be Hollywood, I think, at this point. They do have budgets for it. It does make sense in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of education. And that was the one thing, too, with the bidding process. I think, agencies are so used to just putting out an RFP, and then, you just go through all these bids, and most companies have a template or something to go on so they can just crank out, a proposal. But each project is so case by case, and there's just so many different variables that are involved. So that part, it's just better to bring us in as early as possible.
We've been working, especially the panelists, for years now, right, in this medium, but it still surprises me how many people still have not put on a headset, especially in the marketing departments and at agencies. So yeah, there's a lot of client education. Even at the studio level, and they work in entertainment and media and delivery systems. But we sent our own cameras, our professional cameras, on the set of Transformer 5 to capture a bunch of behind-the-scenes content. And when we brought it back, it's kind of something that we're like, hey, this is a test. We're going to show you what you can really do with some of this stuff, and it's not just putting a camera there and just letting, and then walking away and just shooting it. Really create some, eye candy for your product. And so, initially it was like, oh, no, we don't really want that. We don't really have a budget for it. And, you constantly get those things. And then, once we cut it together and we showed it to them is when they were like, okay, we see now what you're talking about. And being able to do that. So a lot of times it is, doing a lot of demos, putting it in front of them, showing them examples of what they can do and the potential, and the different kind of experiences that you can create for them, for the brands, for the agencies, even for content studios and networks. And so it's becoming really exciting to do that.
I think there's a huge opportunity for advertisers too with web VR. So basically web VR is like taking your browser but turning it into, instead of like a flat 2D where you click on links, turning it into an explorable sort of immersive three-dimensional environment where links can then become like an actual thing that you click on. And what's cool about web VR is then it can easily translate to mobile and also cardboard with just the click if you want to be inside that world. And so I think that one of the challenges, and you probably could speak to this too, is the distribution part. Like if you put all this money into making the VR thing, how do I get it to as many people as possible? And the answer in the past few years has been YouTube or Facebook, which isn't the most ideal solution for all companies. So now I'm out there kind of pounding the pavement being like, you could make a really cool, interactive, VR ready or VR compatible experience that can be accessed on a desktop or on a phone and can be housed on your website at just like, smartwater.com/VR. And I think that can be a nice bridge that can get people used to exploring this content in that way, and then maybe eventually putting it on the headset.
Okay. So why do you think TV networks have been reluctant to actually explore episodic VR? Because there's only been very few series so far. And I just wondered if you guys had any insights on that as to why that is going on.
Well, I
Show
think
me the
technically,
money,
well, let me just technically say, I think it's because right now the resolution is too low, and they're probably waiting for the next generation with Vive and Oculus. It's 2K, so 1K per eye, right? And so if they're thinking, oh, we want this to be VR, well, we want it to be at least like 4K, we have to wait until the next generation. It will get there. It will just take time. The foundries are already producing the 4K headsets. They just don't have the software capabilities. So Vive and I guess Vive technically is Chinese, Taiwanese with their partnership with HTC, but we won't get into that. But with Oculus, they need some months to catch up, but we'll eventually get there.
I would say I believe that it has less to do with the quality, although I'm sure they want it to be if they're going to spend a lot of money on it, then of course they want it to be like the absolute best quality possible and look the sharpest. But I think because there's always, this industry is so young and what we're doing is changing all the time. We're talking about making things and then hoping that whenever they come out, people can still watch them and experience it the way that we had hoped, knowing that like, oh gosh, it's not really it's not cutting edge anymore. I don't think there's the workflow or infrastructure that exists 100% of the time. It's not foolproof right now. It's not the way that they can plug into making television on the lot and just go in 9 to 5 every day and have this cushy TV job, and they know exactly the output and how it's going to turn out and how people will receive it. I mean, it's think about the fact that Netflix still doesn't share all of their data with us. Like, this is even even less transparent. We still don't know. I mean, if we're putting our own stuff out, sure, we can see data and analytics, but I also had a show with Samsung whenever the Milk VR headset or platform came out. It's called Gone, and I still would love to know how many people watched Gone.
I think that there was also this this perception that you couldn't watch any kind of long-form VR piece, and everybody was trying to do these little snack-sized pieces. So I guess for digital, you can do a short-form series, but I don't think the networks were on board yet, and maybe they'll get there soon. But with the idea that somebody wants to live in a headset for a half-hour episode, or even a 15-minute episode. Obviously, gamers, they're sitting in these headsets for extended periods of time, so I think that it'll come around. But
Probably not enough headsets to really right now warrant the investment too. I mean, that's we as we all know, we're in a bit of a chicken and an egg situation in VR right now, and that's why personally, like in the last 6 months, I've made just like evangelism of VR and an encouragement to like whatever I think can boost the marketplace of VR has become kind of my personal goal, because I'm like seeing that like we all want to make art, but people love art, but there has to be more people with headsets engaging with that art, because I think the numbers are still pretty low. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the TV networks and studios, I mean, the reality too is it's just still really hard to create content, much less really great content. And what we've found too is I think a lot of times, they're used to a certain formula and they don't have that formula. And the reality is like the top directors in Hollywood and TV studios aren't necessarily going to be good at VR. And there's a whole kind of misconception, I think, around that. I think it's also hard for outsiders to really even know how to identify really talented people in VR, to be honest. I think there's an issue with, it's hard to recognize talent when you don't know enough about the space to really understand what that is. I mean, as for Speculative Theory, like we've actually had pretty good success with episodic stuff in the sense of Perspective, which we only will release once, but I guess once each year. But we still daily get emails from people and college students on LinkedIn that everybody wants to see the content and they're asking when our next piece is. We did a project with YouTube, which is probably the more successful example of, that project was working with a creator named Matt Pat, who has a show called Game Lab, which is sort of like Mythbusters. It's like taking video game scenarios and then applying it to see how it would map out in the real world. And so he had a 2D show on YouTube. They wanted to create 8 360 standalone episodes to go along in that series. So we released them once each week for 8 weeks. And that got, it was like over 8 million views. They got tons of engagement and traction. And that was a pretty ambitious project for VR especially, but I think it was a good example of we didn't just put each episode in VR. It was like we really created standalone stories that worked for the platform and the space to make it unique so that it actually had a reason for going to see it in VR. So I think it will definitely happen. I think creatively and technically people have to come up with the right concepts to make it worth coming back to.
So I'm going to have the audience ask some questions if they have any. We have 5 minutes, I think. Yep.
Hi, this question is for Jenny. In your working with the live theater and projection, do you work a lot with production designers or set designers to impact what they're designing on sets as projections, or?
Well, we are the projection designers. So we design all the content for projection, but we work really closely with set design, with lighting design, and with obviously the directors to make sure that we're not. We don't want to put actors in front of video. We want to put video as kind of part of the choreography. It's part of the storytelling. It's part of part of the experience itself. So we definitely have to work very closely with the entire theater team to make that happen.
Do you see this as a new trend towards entertainment?
Yes, definitely. And then what we're developing is just more and more immersive with live performance taking traditional theaters and projection mapping them to create an immersive environment, and then also moving into a full dome theater environment with live entertainment is also something that we've been doing a lot of development with. And then also creating a 360 VR pieces for of the shows as well will be a big part of that.
With the growth of content in terms of television film being made available on, YouTube, Hulu, we have other DVDs. Do you see that in terms of television networks being able to experiment more because they're not relying solely on linear television? They actually have these array of platforms now, even live television. Granted, I don't know that you want to do as much live there unless you're doing festivals or something like that. But do you see that as actually opening up, more opportunities for content that's based on?
Almost all of those major companies have at least one person, if not a department, that's dedicated to VR initiatives. So it's like their level of enthusiasm probably varies, but everybody there is actively looking at it and starting to dip their toe and maybe starting to put together the funding slate to get some projects off the ground. And I think we can thank digital distribution for a lot of that, like you said.
And the number one use case for non-gaming VR usage is watching YouTube in VR. So people buy VR Toolbox, my application, or Virtual Desktop, and the number one usage, you look at the message board on the Oculus Store or Steam, it's all because they're watching YouTube 360 videos or multiple YouTube videos. It's a really kind of interesting use case because I have a 360 desktop, and so the trend for my teenage kids are, I can't do this. I can only watch one program at a time. I don't know why. That's how my brain works. But this new generation, I feel like such an old fogey, by the way, is that they're watching like 4 or 5 cat videos. And they might have music video on the side as well. So there's an interesting use case, not just with producing new content for VR, but how people are using VR to watch existing content that was originally produced for theater, for TV. Now it's on YouTube, and then they bring the YouTube into VR.
We have enough of them.
Do you believe that VR has the potential to give women the recognition and the place they should have in society versus other industries? And is that the reason why you're actually working in VR, because you see that potential, or is there something you can do to make VR become that tool or that platform?
Well, I feel like what was cool about VR is, let's say it was like the modern version of it was born in around 2014, and then right off the bat there were like women organizing to kind of make sure that they had solidarity and a voice in the creation of the space. But I do think that the recent scandal has certainly indicated that maybe we had a little bit of false identity, like a false feeling of, like that we were like, just because our Women in VR group is pretty active, that maybe there was more happening there or more progress than there was in real life. But I think what's cool about VR as a medium is that you can be genderless inside VR. And so as that becomes a platform that people begin to engage professionally on, anybody can be anything, and then it really does become about your ideas and how well you can execute them. And that's what we're all really trying to move towards, is just making it about merit and not about any other bullshit.
Right. All right. I think that because VR started, recently, relatively, I mean, it's been around for a
This
really
version
long
of it,
time.
yeah,
This
yeah.
version of VR. And I think it kind of has leveled the playing field. So yes, to a certain extent, I think the entry point to be able to create content and have the ability to do it, regardless of gender, is possible. And even though you're starting to see some separation, with some of the conglomerates in the marketplace, I still think that there is a lot of innovation and ideas and further development in software and hardware as well, where there could be a lot of engagement from anyone, not just the people with all the money. So.
I think that also, since it's a fairly new, innovative way of approaching things, a new business model, that there's not an established old boys club already in the space. There's room for women to come in and shine, and there's not that big brother thing going on, whereas other more established industries, there's already that old boys network that's really hard to break into. This is an opportunity, I think, for women to really go out there and shine and show their merit without having to break into an already established paradigm.
Yeah, and we're telling all the young women, we're like, learn Unity, learn Unreal, and then they'll come up and they'll be these awesome developers and can be out there proving themselves right off the bat, and it'll be obvious what rises to the top, because there will be the pieces that are popular, the ones that make money, the ones that have impact, and I do think a lot of those will be from women.
Yeah, exactly. It's so new. There's so many opportunities. I'm launching one of the first family-friendly VR games. That's just how new the market is, right? At E3 in June. And I have the top selling, I can say I have the top selling productivity app in VR, and I'm a 10-person studio. I founded the studio. It's a small company, and I'm able to do something that Microsoft has not been able to ship, which is a 360 VR desktop with detachable windows where you can bring in Word, PowerPoint, Palantir, whatever your Windows app is, into a 360 environment. So my point is that if I can do it, anybody can do it, right? It's such a new industry. I really encourage any women, girls to go into an industry like this, or something that's new and emerging, where they're not established big brother or a boys club with limited resources. You can really bootstrap, self-publish, put yourself on Steam, on Oculus. It's not that hard to. And then because it's so new, and I think it's a good thing that there's only 500,000 headsets. It's a small community. So I actually didn't have to spend that much money on marketing. I put myself on Steam, on Oculus. You search for a productivity app. You know what's going to come up? Well, VR Toolbox. It's the same thing. Well, you search for family-friendly VR games. Because it's so new, no one else is doing it, then my game shows up. So I really, encourage anyone who's intimidated by VR. It's this tech-heavy industry. Because it's so new, there's so many opportunities. Follow your passion and your interests, and you can really make great things happen.
Okay. All right, I think you were waiting a while.
I have a teenage daughter who just asked me, Mom, what should I take next year? I'm going to be taking a community college class, and I said, take coding. So this reminds me of the story, but I'm also finishing up at Cal State Long Beach as a journalist, and we had to learn HTML, which was painstaking for me because I know all these other programs, I'm like, HTML too? But now I'm realizing how important it is to learn these things. So what else would you suggest that I take so that I can also get into VR and tell my stories?
Unity.
Yeah.
Unity.
Unity, Unreal Engine.
So,
SketchUp.
Yeah.
yeah. So, sorry, you're next. I know you've been trying for a while.
It's all girls up there, yeah. We have some game time, right?
Yeah.
My question is kind of a little bit hard because I've asked it at every panel, and I know it's a hard situation. But other than with new headsets, right, or that are more efficient, lighter, less DC, blah blah blah, what do you guys suggest might be a good way to encourage long-form, dramatic VR projects? I know that that's not what you people usually do, but I think it has potential, whether it's short or long. Do you guys have any ideas?
You could make something that would be enjoyable on a desktop too, you know, like make it something that's still fun to do on a plain desktop, though would be maybe taken to a heightened level if gone into a headset. Again, kind of meeting people where they live, which is right now on their laptops and on their iPads. Also, I feel like there's an opportunity for site specific kind of activations. So I went to a really cool immersive modern art exhibit called the 14th Factory this past weekend. You guys should go. It's on the east side of LA. Huge factory that they've turned into a giant immersive art experience. 2 hours to go through the whole thing. I feel like there's a way to do like maybe a mixed media experience that involves VR that could be an event that people go to. And
I think they could do
Also-
half TV show, half a TV show that was, say, 25 minutes long that they could sell foreign, and then the other part of it was in VR that actually didn't kind of affect the story that much, but enhanced the story.
Yeah, multi-platform storytelling. So what your VR piece is something that you can't get with the regular format television program or film. So once they're drawn in, your audience is drawn into your story, they want more, then they have to go into your VR set, your VR piece to complete the story or get that little bit more backstory or whatever piece of that story, that universe that you want to share with them.
And you should also think about, interactive, like choose your own adventure, multi-branching type storytelling, because I think that could, play out in a longer form and be replayable, so that you can have different types of experiences, so just outside of what you would think a traditional long-form film.
Right, like so maybe you could do the experience in one way, it would be 5 minutes, but if you wanted to stay in it longer, you could go in for like a half an hour.
Yeah, so think about like Sleep No More as an example, out of New York, how there's several casts of characters and you can follow each one and have a different storyline, but it's all part of the same experience, would be.
Okay, I've got to wrap up. I'm really sorry, but you can come and ask us afterwards. But thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thanks, Louisa.